Question 1. When faced with a situation where his forklift began to tip while maneuvering, a tight turn on a sloped loading dock, Vargas instinctively attempted to jump out of the operator's seat. The forklift was carrying a large HVAC air handler unit and the load was near its maximum capacity. What action should Vargas have taken to maximize his safety? A. Try to leap away from the direction of the tipping forklift. B. Grip the steering wheel firmly and brace himself inside the operator compartment. C. Let go of the steering wheel and roll away from the forklift. D. Try to counterbalance the forklift by leaning in the opposite direction. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. According to OSHA Standard 29 CFR S.178 L3 IM, operators must know how to react in the event of tip over. Jumping increases the risk of being crushed under the forklift's overhead guard or chassis. The safest response is to stay in the seat, hold on tightly, and brace with feet firmly on the floor. This leverages the protective structure of the forklift and reduces injuries. Leaning or counterbalancing the tip is ineffective due to the mass involved. Question 2. To illustrate this point, a warehouse supervisor asks Daniels to move a large HVAC rooftop unit using a Class O internal combustion forklift rated at 5,000 pounds at a 24-inch load center. The unit weighs 4,800 pounds but has a 48-inch load center due to its length. Should Daniels proceed? A. Yes, because the weight is under the forklift's rated capacity. B. No, because the extended load center reduces lifting capacity. C. Yes, if the load is centered precisely on the forks. D. No, unless she operates at slower speed and tighter turn radius. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Per OSHA and ANSI B.1 standards, the load center significantly affects lifting capacity, while the unit's weight is under 5,000 pounds. 48-inch load center effectively reduces the forklift's safe capacity likely below the actual load weight. Operators must verify capacity on the data plate, which adjusts for load center dimensions. Lifting load beyond the rated moment can lead to instability or tipping. Question 3. A demonstrated by Lin, a technician preparing to operate a propane forklift in a poorly ventilated indoor facility. He puts on a basic cloth mask to reduce the smell of exhaust but wears no other safety gear. Which of the following is the most appropriate PPE requirement in this situation? A. A full face shield to protect from propane leaks. B. Safety glasses and hearing protection only. C. Proper ventilation or carbon monoxide monitoring with suitable respiratory protection. D. Steel toe boots and rubber gloves for all forklift operations. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. OSHA mandates under 29 CFR S.134 and SS.178 that propane-powered forklifts indoors must have adequate ventilation due to the risk of carbon monoxide poisoning. Respiratory protection is required where engineering controls like ventilation aren't sufficient. Cloth masks offer no protection from co-gas. Operators must ensure proper PPE depending on environmental risks, not just operational ones. Question 4. The impact of mishandling is evident when Mr. Alonso transports a condenser coil with exposed copper tubing using a forklift. He accelerates quickly and stops abruptly multiple times during transport, despite the unit being lightly secured. Upon delivery, the coil shows signs of deformation. What was the most critical mistake made? A. Accelerating with too much load on the forks. B. Not using spotters during movement. C. Failing to stabilize the load before transport. D. Operating the forklift at too high a speed. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. HVACR equipment, especially copper tubing and coils, are vulnerable to vibrations and shifting during transport. OSHA guidelines and manufacturer recommendations stress securing fragile loads before movement. While speed and spotters help safety overall, the lack of stabilization and proper strapping allowed the unit to shift, leading to damage. This violates general duty clauses under 29 USC requiring safe handling of materials. Question 5. By evaluating the practices of a facility where forklifts are parked in a confined charging area, an inspector notices that operators frequently leave the ignition on while charging electric forklifts and smoke near the charging station. What immediate risk is present? A. Short-circuiting of battery leads. B. Overheating of forklift control circuits. C. Hydrogen gas explosion. D. Poor battery charging efficiency. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. During charging, lead-acid batteries emit hydrogen gas, which is highly explosive in enclosed areas. OSHA 29 CFRS.178 G2 requires proper ventilation and prohibits smoking open flames. Ignition on during charging may increase arcing. Hydrogen buildup plus spark equals explosion risk. This is serious safety violation and must be corrected with signage, ventilation, and training. Question 6. Considering the evidence Mr. Berger attempts to reverse an electric forklift with a wide HVAC coil in a narrow aisle. He does not use a spotter and relies solely on mirrors and alarms. While reversing, he collides with a metal shelving unit, damaging both the shelf and load. What could have most effectively prevented this incident? A. A rear-mounted camera system. B. Using a train spotter for rear navigation. C. Upgrading to a smaller forklift. D. Increasing the reverse alarm volume. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. OSHA 29 CRS.178 N4 emphasizes visibility and the use of spotters when visibility is obstructed. Reversing in tight spaces, especially with large loads, is high-risk activity. Relying on alarms and mirrors isn't sufficient. Trained spotter can guide the operator, ensuring safe clearance and load protection. Cameras help but can't match human judgment in tight HVAC. Question 7. From a practical standpoint, Morgan is asked to move an HVAC evaporator coil that is wider on one side due to an integrated control box. She centers the forks visually under the unit and lifts it quickly. Midway through travel, the forklift begins to tilt sideways. What was the primary cause? A. The unit exceeded the rated capacity. B. The uneven load caused off-center weight distribution. C. The forklift's tires were underinflated. D. The forks were extended too far. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Uneven HVACR loads like offset coils shift the center of gravity, violating the stability triangle principle. OSHA requires awareness of load balance 29 CRS.178 or even within weight limits. Improper weight distribution can cause tipping. Operators must assess asymmetrical designs and adjust fork placement or use additional rigging to stabilize. Question 8. Among the various safety tasks, which of the following should be considered? A mandatory pre-operational inspection step before each shift, according to OSHA forklift standards. A. Checking oil viscosity and engine emissions. B. Ensuring horn, brakes, lights, and alarms are functional. C. Recording hours of operation for maintenance logs. D. Calibrating lift controls using diagnostic software. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. OSHA 29 CRS.178 Q7 requires daily pre-use inspection that includes operational checks of horn, brakes, lights, steering, and warning devices. These features are critical for safe maneuvering around personnel and equipment. Emission checks and diagnostics are important but not required per shift. Question 9. Throughout the course of preparing, a large rooftop unit for lifting Istasing uses nylon straps without corner protection to secure the load. During forklift transport, one strap tears as it rubs against the sharp corner of the HVAC cabinet. What rigging principle did Istasing most clearly ignore? A. Using double straps on all loads. B. Preventing over-tensioning during rigging. C. Applying edge protection to sharp corners. D. Avoiding friction between metal surfaces. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. ANSI B.9 and OSHA recommend corner protection when rigging loads with sharp edges to avoid cutting slings or straps. Nylon and synthetic straps are vulnerable to sharp metal corners found on HVAC cabinets. The failure to use protective sleeves or padding here directly caused the tear, risking dropped loads. Question 10. The underlying principle of forklift safety depends on the operator's understanding of the stability triangle. What factor can cause forklift to fall outside this triangle even if the load is below capacity? A. Properly centered but lightweight load. B. Operating on perfectly level surface. C. Turning sharply with raised load. D. Braking slowly while descending ramp. Answer. Correct answer. See explanation. The stability triangle is formed between the front wheels and rear center. Raising the load elevates the center of gravity. When turning, centrifugal force pushes that center outward. OSHA and answer B.1 state that turning with an elevated load greatly increases the chance of tipping even within weight limits. Question 11. During a delivery, Istacata must navigate his forklift through a temporary barrier may set up in a facility undergoing HVAC renovations. The ducting on the forks obstructs his forward view, and warning signage is partially missing. To meet OSHA standards and prevent a potential collision, what should Istacata do? A. Rely on backup alarms and proceed slowly in reverse. B. Use a spotter to guide him through the obstructed path. C. Drive forward with hazard lights blinking. D. Wait until a supervisor can remove the obstructions. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. According to OSHA 29 CRS.170 N. 4. If load obstructs the operator's view, they must drive in reverse or use spotter. Spotters are required when visibility is compromised, especially near pedestrians or obstacles. Driving forward or relying solely on alarms increases risk. Spotter ensures safe, compliant operation. Question 12. In a repair shop, an HVAC technician installs a custom-built platform on a forklift to raise ductwork installers. The platform lacks railings or a locking mechanism. What is the OSHA-compliant response to this scenario? A. Allow the use only if operators are experienced. B. Never use a custom platform unless it meets OSHA manufacturer requirements. C. Only use the platform indoors and on level ground. D. Use the platform with 4 harnesses only. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Per OSHA 29 CFRS.178 A. 4. No forklift modifications are allowed unless approved by the manufacturer. Work platforms must meet ANSYS B.1 standards with guardrails and attachment systems. Homemade platforms without these violate OSHA rules and can cause fatal falls. Even harnesses don't replace proper structural design. Question 13. While operating a forklift outside on a gravel surface, Kim attempts to move a palletized HVAC condenser during heavy rain. As she turns, the forklift fishtails slightly. Which action would have best prevented this near incident? A. Adding more ballast weight to the rear of the forklift. B. Avoiding sudden turns and reducing speed in wet conditions. C. Lowering the forks closer to the ground while accelerating. D. Increasing tire pressure for better surface traction. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. OSHA emphasizes the need to adjust driving behavior based on surface conditions. 29 CFR.178 N6. On uneven or wet surfaces, reduced speed and gradual turns help maintain stability. Fishtailing on gravel is caused by lateral force during turns, especially when surfaces are slick. Weight changes or tire pressure won't prevent loss of traction as effectively as safer driving habits. Question 14. At the end of his shift, Mr. Lewis leaves a propane forklift on a sloped driveway with the forks lowered and the parking brake engaged but leaves the engine running. What is OSHA's position on this action? A. It is compliant as long as the operator stays within sight. B. It is non-compliant. The engine must be shut off when unattended. C. It is acceptable only if chocks are used under the wheels. D. It is allowed if the forks are also tilted forward. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Per OSHA 29 CFRS.178 M5I, when powered industrial truck is left unattended, the controls must be neutralized, power turned off and brake set. Leaving the engine running on slope violates this rule and increases runaway risks. Chocks can be added, but the engine must be off if unattended. Question 15. During a site survey, Mr. Collard is asked to operate a diesel forklift inside a mechanical room to unload HVACR compressors. The room has one small ventilation fan and poor airflow. What is the correct decision? A. Proceed with work but take breaks every 30 minutes. B. Use the diesel forklift with the bay doors open. C. Refuse and request an electric or LPG forklift instead. D. Wear a respirator and continue the task. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Per OSHA 29 CFR S.178c, internal combustion forklifts are prohibited in poorly ventilated enclosed areas due to CO and NOx exposure. An electric or properly ventilated LPG unit should be used. Personal PPE like respirators doesn't make it safe or compliant. Health hazards from diesel emissions are serious and cumulative. Question 16. In a distribution center, Mr. Rivera lifts a large HVAC crate and begins to travel with the load raised several feet to avoid floor debris. What is the biggest safety concern in this situation? A. The load could fall off the forks due to gravity. B. The forklift's overhead guard could hit low ceilings. C. The raised load shifts the center of gravity upward, increasing tip-over risk. D. The load may obstruct the view even with mirrors. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. OSHA 29 CR S.178 and 7 ohm through states that loads must be carried as low as possible to the ground, usually 4-6 inches. Raised load significantly alters the center of gravity, reducing lateral stability and increasing the risk of tipping, especially when turning or on uneven surfaces. This is a major cause of forklift rollovers. Question 17. While navigating a dock, Taylor must transport a 6-foot-tall HVAC cabinet that blocks her line of sight. What is her best option to ensure safety and OSHA compliance? A. Use a mirror to check blind spots before proceeding. B. Use a flag or pole to mark the top of the load. C. Travel in reverse with the load trailing behind. D. Move forward slowly while sounding the horn at intervals. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. When the load restricts forward visibility, OSHA requires traveling in reverse unless doing so is impractical or unsafe. 29 CFR S.178 N4. This keeps the operator's field of view clear and helps avoid collisions. Mirrors and horns are supplemental tools, not substitutes for proper directional travel when vision is obstructed. Question 18. While moving a narrow HVAC control panel crate, Mr. Ortega keeps the forks spaced wide to increase lateral stability. However, the crate tips sideways during transport. What was the key mistake? A. The forks should have been tilted slightly upward. B. The forks were too far apart for the crate's width. C. The forklift was moving in reverse too quickly. D. The crate wasn't balanced evenly between the forks. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Proper fork spacing is essential to load stability. Forks that are too far apart may not support the full bottom width of narrow loads, increasing tipping risk. OSHA recommends adjusting forks to fit the width of the load base. This prevents imbalance and ensures even support throughout transport. Question 19. While ascending a ramp with a heavy HVAC chiller, Mr. Green attempts to reverse up the incline to improve visibility. The forklift suddenly loses traction and starts rolling backward. What was his critical error? A. Not increasing speed before the incline. B. Driving in reverse up a ramp with a loaded forklift. C. Failing to use a spotter at the base of the ramp. D. Not lowering the load before climbing. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. OSHA states in SS.178 N7I that loaded forklifts must always be driven forward up ramps and in reverse down ramps to maintain load stability and control. Driving in reverse up ramp can cause the center of gravity to shift dangerously. Loss of traction and tipping backward are likely. Question 20. While refueling his propane-powered forklift at the end of a shift, Mr. Juan leaves the ignition switch in the on position as the forklift was operating normally and no alarms were active. Which of the following is the most serious hazard associated with this action? A. Battery drainage from leaving the switch on. B. Risk of static electricity igniting propane vapors. C. Potential memory loss of electronic control systems. D. Slight increase in fuel tank pressure. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Propane is highly flammable, and refueling while ignition components are energized introduces the risk of sparks or static discharge igniting vapors. OSHA requires all power be shut off during refueling operations. 29 CRS.178 F3. This minimizes ignition sources and ensures safe propane handling. Question 21. When evaluating the safe transport of A large rooftop HVAC unit measuring 96 inches in length. Mr. O'Neill checks the forklift's data plate, which lists a rated capacity of 4,000 pounds at a 24-inch load center. The unit weighs 3,600 pounds and will be lifted from its long side. What is the most appropriate conclusion? A. The load is safe because it weighs less than the rated capacity. B. The forklift must be derated because the load center exceeds 24 inches. C. The operator should use additional counterweights to balance the load. D. The load can be handled if lifted from its narrow side only. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. The load center is the distance from the vertical face of the forks to the load center of gravity. Exceeding the rated load center 24 requires derating the forklift's capacity. Although 3,600 pounds is under the 4,000 lb limit, the actual load center is 48 inches, cutting capacity significantly. OSHA requires operators to understand this concept under 29 CFR S.178.02 and ANSYS B.1 standards. Question 22. Is Hargrove working in an HVAC warehouse begins charging a forklift battery without removing metallic jewelry or activating ventilation fans? Which potential hazard does this behavior most directly violate? A. Chemical exposure standards related to sulfuric acid. B. Arc flash prevention protocols during electrical work. C. Hydrogen gas accumulation and ignition risk. D. Grounding system requirements under NEC standards. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Battery charging produces hydrogen gas, which is highly explosive in enclosed or unventilated areas. OSHA 29 CFR S.178 G2 mandates that charging areas be well ventilated and free from ignition sources. Jewelry can arc if it touches terminals, adding to explosion risk. Proper PPE, removal of conductive items, and ventilation are critical to safety. Question 23. Which of the following components plays the most critical role in preventing a load from falling backward onto the forklift operator during an emergency stop? A. Counterweight. B. Load backrest extension. C. Tilt cylinder. D. Overhead guard. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. The load backrest extension is designed to prevent the load from sliding backward toward the operator, especially during sudden stops or while tilting. OSHA includes this as a safety requirement under 29 CFR S.178 M10. The counterweight stabilizes the truck. The overhead guard protects from falling objects, and tilt cylinders control mast angle, but only the backrest prevents load fallback. Question 24. In a narrow corridor, Istabaya is transporting a tall stack of HVAC filters with limited forward visibility. A spotter is assigned but begins using inconsistent hand signals. What should Istabaya do next according to best practice? A. Stop the forklift immediately and request clarification. B. Proceed slowly and rely on auditory cues from the spotter. C. Continue but sound the horn at regular intervals. D. Lower the load to improve visibility. Answer. Correct answer. Explanation. According to OSHA's General Duty Cause and ANSYS B.1, when communication is unclear or unsafe, the operator must stop. Conflicting signals can result in collisions or injuries. Clear, consistent signaling protocol is essential. Proceeding without clarity violates safety communication protocols and endangers workers. Question 25. During a lift, Mr. Singh prepares to place an HVACR air handler on a mezzanine platform. Overhead, several conduit pipes and a fire sprinkler system are installed. What is the best control measure before continuing? A. Sound the horn before raising the load. B. Ask a spotter to monitor vertical clearance during the lift. C. Slowly lift while monitoring with side mirrors. D. Wait for a facility electrician to inspect overhead clearances. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Overhead obstructions are a major cause of product and infrastructure damage. OSHA requires operators to be aware of overhead hazards 29 CFR S.178 M12. The safest practice is to have qualified spotter monitor clearance during vertical lifts. Sprinkler heads and pipes are easily damaged by even slow contact, leading to expensive incidents or safety violations. Question 26. While transporting multiple HVAC copper coil assemblies, Mr. Daniels decides to place a second layer directly atop the first to maximize efficiency. No straps or spacers are used. What hazard is most directly introduced? A. Overloading the forklift's mast. B. Obstructed operator visibility. C. Compression damage to fragile components. D. Increased fuel consumption due to weight. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. Copper coils and other HVACR components are extremely fragile and susceptible to compression or denting when stacked improperly. OSHA requires that materials be transported in a way that prevents shifting or damage. 29 CFR S.178 M11. Proper load securing, spacing, and strapping are essential. Visibility or weight concerns may apply but aren't the primary risk here. Question 27. When faced with a forklift tip-over while operating a sit-down counterbalanced truck, Mr. Nolan panics and attempts to jump clear of the machine. What is the OSHA recommended procedure in this situation? A. Jump out to avoid being crushed by the overhead guard. B. Remain in the seat, brace with arms, and lean away from the fall. C. Turn off the ignition and honk the horn as a warning. D. Exit the forklift on the opposite side of the tilt. Answer. Correct answer. B. Explanation. Per OSHA and forklift manufacturer safety protocols, during a tip-over on a sit-down forklift, operators must stay in the seat, brace themselves, and lean away from the direction of the tip. Jumping often results in fatal crushing injuries. This guidance is part of operator training under 29 CFR S.178L. Question 20. Mr. Ruiz is placing a heavy HVACR condenser unit on a cantilevered rack. He retracts the forks too quickly while the load is still being released. What could this action most likely cause? A. The load will slide forward and fall off the rack. B. The forklift mass will jerk backward. C. The condenser will remain securely in place. D. The rack's cantilever arms may deform under pressure. Answer. Correct answer. Explanation. Improper withdrawal of forks can cause load instability, particularly on open racks like cantilever systems. OSHA stresses that loads must be placed squarely and gently, and operators must ensure full stability before retracting forks. 29 CRS.178 M10. Abrupt withdrawal can shift the load forward, leading to falls or damage. Question 29. Mr. Vargas is assigned to move a large packaged HVAC unit with an offset sensor of gravity due to an attached fan assembly. What's the most critical consideration to maintain forklift balance? A. Positioning the fan side away from the forklift mast. B. Lifting the unit at slightly higher tilt angle. C. Centering the heaviest side closest to the forklift's backrest. D. Placing wedges under the lighter side of the load. Answer. Correct answer. C. Explanation. To maintain load balance, the heaviest part should always be against the low backrest, closest to the mast. This preserves the forklift's center of gravity and stability triangle. Uneven loads increase tipping risk when the weight is further from the fulcrum point. OSHA 29 CFR S.178 01 emphasizes correct load orientation as critical to safe operation. Question 30. In a biz HVACR warehouse, Mr. Ford reverses a forklift near a loading dock. A pedestrian employee walks behind him unexpectedly. Which measure would have most effectively prevented this near miss? A. Installing convex mirrors at loading dock corners. B. Adding a review camera system. C. Honking the horn before reversing. D. Establishing pedestrian exclusion zones in forklift areas. Answer. Correct answer. D. Explanation. While alarms, horns, and mirrors are helpful, the most effective prevention involves engineering controls like exclusion zones, designated walkways, and barriers. OSHA recommends physical separation of forklift traffic from pedestrians. OSHA Safety and Health Information Bulletin SHIB 09-2005. These controls eliminate the hazard, whereas other options only mitigate it.